Another day and a brand new kit for Arsenal releases. We've got transfer news, both ins and outs, as we close in on Arsenal's pre-season tour. This is the Arsenal Transfer Show. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys and girls for another episode of what is the Arsenal Transfer Show. Joining you every single morning at 8 o'clock UK time. Thank you as always for joining me and making this part of your morning routines. It is incredibly appreciated. So thank you to you all for tuning in, and to those joining us live in the chat box. Good morning to Martin and Johan Pikahu, Martin, Olawale, Steve, Barry, Brad, Paul, Matt G. We've got Carlton and Amaral Gooner, another Paul, Dominico, NSW, Amira, Stevie, Damien, Blackshine, Knowledge, Answer, Morgie, Suko, Vivian, Ameka, Babatundi, and plenty more of you guys and girls too. So thank you to you. And for those listening, of course, on catch up and on audio platforms as well, thank you to you all. And if you could ever be so kind to jump over to YouTube, and if you're not already here already, to drop a like on the video and help us, of course, on our target to 1K every single day on the channel. And thank you for all the kind words. Yesterday's show was intense. It was deep. We talked about some really important topics, and it made me think. I even changed my mind on a couple of things post-show, in some collaboration and conversation with some of our commenters as well. So I hope that you feel that this is indeed an open forum, that is a safe space to have these types of important discussions, where I'm certainly going to be open to changing my mind on certain things. And I think that was certainly witnessed yesterday as well. So thank you for all of the comments yesterday, for the 99% that are able, as always, to keep it very clean as well and respectful. If you are new to the channel and this is your first time tuning in, of course, we do these shows every single morning at 8 a.m, rounding up all the latest Arsenal news before going into the second part of the show and tackling as many of your questions as we can. But we have a task to do this morning, because in part two of the show, I am going to buy the new Arsenal away kit. Now, I know that it is not everybody's favourite. I know that it's not one that everybody's going to buy or rates particularly high. I have felt the design grow on me quite a lot, and I will be purchasing it. I like it far more than last season's away kit. Obviously, I'm a big enjoyer of black kits, and you'll know from the 2022-3 season, of course, that my love for the black and gold or black and bronze away kit was beyond any other kit ever released. And whilst this kit is nowhere near, let's be honest, as good as that, it is growing on me. It is growing on me. The only issue I've got with it, it's not the red or the green, it's the white. It's the white accents on it. Maybe it looks better in person. It looked a lot better on the players. But the challenge that we've got is coming up with who I should get on the back. I always get a player on the back. And last season, we had Santi Cazorla, which my brilliant listeners all chipped in to buy me the away shirt that I just love so much, and put my favourite player on the back of my least favourite shirt. The irony was not lost. The home shirt had who was on the home shirt? I think it was Zinchenko, and the away the third shirt had Saka on. So we've got to decide who's going to go on the away kit. The third kit is usually reserved for a new signing. Usually, it wasn't last season, but this season it may be reserved for a new signing. We'll see what happens later on in the window. But this is the new kit. Let me know what your thoughts are, of course, on it as well. Moving into more transfer-related stories, Tommy Setford is due for his Arsenal announcement. We are expecting this deal to be announced really at any kind of point in the near future. There was reports yesterday about his medical, of course. That is understood to be accurate. And it's now a case of when rather than if we get an announcement of Tommy Setford's move from Ajax to Arsenal. The England youth international is a key player for their youth sides. It's under 18 and 19s, and even got into the 20s level as well. Has been on the bench actually for England's under 20 team too, and he'll be part of the Arsenal youth squad for next season, but with a real clear pathway, it seems, for him. And there was certainly an element of selling the Arsenal project and the pathway to him to convince him to switch Ajax for Arsenal, which has proven to be, of course, successful. Reiss Nelson is supposedly very open and has almost basically effectively agreed to join West Ham, should indeed all of the terms be to his and his team's liking, and it would just be a case of Arsenal then agreeing a deal with West Ham for a move for Reiss Nelson. A lot of this comes from ex-West Ham United employee, the Patreon account, of course, of the anonymous individual who produces plenty of inside scoops on the Hammers. But Reiss Nelson's future, it seems, could be heading more toward, certainly heading more towards another London club and not staying with Arsenal. The fee could be between 15 and 20 million pounds. And certainly that is a very, very good price. I think we can all agree for Arsenal to potentially get their hands on that amount of money for a player like Reiss Nelson. So yes, I look forward to seeing how much Arsenal get for Reiss Nelson. At Marseille, however, their move for Nketiah, as has been reported by plenty of kind of French outlets, but far less so. In fact, I had a couple of French reporters reach out to me this week and ask of kind of if there was any update on this side of the channel, if you like, for this. And I said, no, not really. Nothing is really being talked about with Nketiah and Marseille. And supposedly, according to the latest reports out of France, this deal has not progressed much at all. And there hasn't been any real dialogue between the clubs that has come to any kind of agreement on a potential price tag at this point in time. So at the moment, it doesn't look like this is going to happen. Now, Riccardo Calafiori, a player, of course, who plenty of Arsenal supporters are wondering when, rather than if, he will be arriving at the club. Now, of course, there is an element of frustration, and I suppose rightfully so, to a degree, from fans as to where on earth this is. Where is Calafiori? Why has it not happened? Why is it not happening? Now, from an Arsenal perspective, certainly my understanding of the situation is that Arsenal have basically done all they can, and that the price tag in question, as was being previously reported to being kind of a 5 million discrepancy, if you like, that doesn't seem to be the biggest sticking point with this deal. The biggest sticking point of this deal is completely out of Arsenal's hands, and it's out of Calafiori's hands as well. And it seems that the latest information is that Basel's sell-on clause that they have, which is between 40 and 50%, is too high, that Bologna want that to be reduced. And what I have to ask that why? Why should Basel reduce their sell-on clause? Imagine if Arsenal had put a sell-on clause into any, let's say Balogun, right, for example, who's got a significant sell-on clause between 17.5% and 20%, I'm told. Or even Tavares, who's got a sell-on clause, I'm told, in excess of 25% in his. And say another club comes in and wants to spend 50, or let's ironically say Tavares, 40 million for Tavares they get. It's never going to happen, but, let's hypothetically say Lazio approach with a 40 million euro deal for Tavares. And they go, that's great, but we don't really want to give 10 million of that to Arsenal. And we think that's far too high of a kind of a portion to give to Arsenal. Arsenal would turn around surely and be like, this is a joke, right? You agreed to this when you sold or bought the player, and you have to respect it. That's what frustrates me about this situation, is that Bologna are frustrated that the deal that they agreed to get Calafiori in the first place seems to be a sticking point, because they are annoyed that they are going to see a lot of the money that they are going to get from this deal lost to Basel. It's ridiculous. And the fact that they want to come to some kind of agreement, but no one should be annoyed at Basel, right? No one should be annoyed at Basel. The only club that is really and should face any scrutiny is Bologna in this situation. It's baffling. So for those complaining that Arsenal are being slow or Arsenal are dilly-dallying, it's nothing to do with Arsenal. And it is about this sell-on clause that Bologna are, regretting in the with the benefit of hindsight, it seems, which is causing a delay in this move. Now, Nico Williams has been certainly in the headlines plenty since Sunday's final, but way before that as well. And while Arsenal are said to be, not his favoured destination, and certainly when it comes to a player like Williams, Barcelona have always said to be ahead of them in the race for the Athletic Club winger. There has been rumours circulating that Arsenal's interests, of course, which I know to be real, will indeed progress, and there could be moves made for Williams from Arsenal in the coming days and weeks as Barcelona struggle with the financial side of activating that £42 million release clause, which has been reported by many outlets in Williams's contract. If Arsenal were to secure the signing of Williams, I personally believe it would be considered one of the signings, if not the signing of the window, potentially. But the profile of Williams has never been higher. His performance at the European Championships were excellent. He had a brilliant season for Athletic Club, being one of the most creative wide players on the planet. And his versatility means that he can play both on the left and on the right, which is what Arsenal want from a wide player. It doesn't mean that we have just overloaded the left-hand side. It future-proofs for Leandro Trossard, so that provides competition and cover and rotation for Saka. It would be an excellent deal for Arsenal to do. And if Arsenal do secure the deal for Williams, which I'm not saying is likely at this stage, by the way, but there is a small chance that they could do this because they want the player. They like the player, and Arteta really does appreciate the player. And so sometimes you never know, it could happen. This would be an excellent deal for the Gunners to do. I am surprised at how quickly rhetoric has changed from certainly supporters of Williams. I remember doing shows before the European Championships talking about Nico Williams as long as a year ago, and a lot of people were unconvinced. Even as early as a few months ago before the Euros, even a couple of months ago before the Euros, people weren't convinced by Williams as potentially an option. It was too expensive, too raw, too young, and too specified to the left-hand side, which was never the case. It's amazing what a European tournament can do to change a huge swathe of opinions on a player. And I always say it's always worth going watching these players before, you come to any kind of solidified conclusion on whether Arsenal should go for them. As you know, we've been, very big fans of Williams, not without our criticisms, of course, and our scrutiny at times, because there's been question marks about consistency at times. But I think we can all agree that he is at that age that he's produced some fantastic stuff. But Williams is a great talent. And if Arsenal were to get him, I think it would be considered one of the signings of the summer. But yes, we'll see what happens, and we'll keep you updated on this thread as indeed it continues to develop and move. But we're going to move to part 2 now, and your questions right after this. Okay, this is part 2 of the show where we go into the chat box and we tackle as many of your questions as we can. But we're going to start with our mission, which is you helping me decide who is going to go on the back of this Arsenal shirt. Now, some people I've already seen in the chat box have said you need to do a poll. And then on paper, that sounds great, right? It sounds great to do a poll. But I have very much been the victim of some bad results of polls. So I am very much in the camp of no. I'm not going to do a poll on all the players because I know how this can happen. I could end up with, Nelson on the back and then he leaves. So I'm going to narrow it down and I want some discussion and we'll come back to it at the end of the show. But the players that I'm kind of stuck between at the moment are Ben White, William Saliba, Declan Rice, and Jurriën Timber. These are the players that I am stuck on at the moment. They are the 4 that I'm stuck on at the moment. And so they are the ones that I'd like some suggestions as to why they should be picked. Timber, White, Rice, and Saliba. They are the ones that I'm stuck on right now. But you see, that my listeners think they're funny. And Tiger and Gooner says I should get Ozil. Ticking Time Bomb says I should get Draxler. Mustafi says Pratika. I do love the suggestions, by the way, for Kevin Campbell. I think that's a lovely tribute. To be honest, though, I think there are better ways of showing my tribute and my absolute adoration for my not previously at all. I hate talking about things like that in the past tense, but for my friend, Kevin Campbell, it'd be a lovely tribute, wouldn't it? But I think there are brilliant ways that we can honour Kev's memory. More so than me putting Kev's name on the back of my shirt. But I appreciate heavily the sentiments behind that. But yes, I'm curious to get your thoughts. So I'm going to put that out there. Maybe we will go back. But There are, when people say there are no wrong answers, there are wrong answers here, just to make you fully aware of the situation. So do bear that in mind. By the way, this shirt, which I got this week, actually, you saw me wear it last Friday, but this is a different one because the one I got last Friday was a large, and the large, for anyone that was interested in buying this shirt, it isn't oversized. This trend going around at the moment. For those that are listening on audio platforms, it's like a light blue turquoisey color. It's a little. I think it's more going to be in the theme of like the third kit. For those who've seen the leaked images, the third kit, I think it's along the same kind of thread color wise of the light blue shade of the transitional through to the purple. I think that it is for the third kit. There's a real trend at the moment of these oversized shirts. You may have seen them around. Lots of brands are doing them. And this is in that style. So I got a large and it's massive. Like it nearly goes down to my knees. And I'm 6'3". So it is big. And the thing is, Arsenal aren't great at doing returns for just like size swaps. So I've bought the medium as well. And I'll probably still wear the large oversized one for like, just wearing it at night, probably like a 90, because it's that big. But yeah, I do really like this top and the color as well, and I think it's going to make me like the third kit when it eventually comes out a lot more as well. Jean says, what about a player from the women's team? I'm not against this at all. The idea of getting like, I really did consider Alessia Russo as well, but ultimately, I watch far more of the men's team, and obviously, I think covering the men's team as well. I'd quite like one of the men's players, and I don't think I can ever be accused of showing any kind of favoritism at all. Really, to be fair, we cover the women's team a hell of a lot on the channel, but it's going to be one of the fellas. As a little Easter egg there, actually, that I will be going for. Matt G says, Tom, we can still get 40 million for Nuno Tavares. We have a 25% sell-on clause, so all we need to do is see Lazio sell it for 160 million. Do you think this is likely? Oh, there's always a chance, mate. Never say never. Never say never. So Nicholas says, Tom, what can Bologna do? They could just not sell him, but I don't see him being with that. I'm having a hard time seeing where it goes from here, and that's a positive, I suppose, for them. Yeah, it's a really fluid situation, it seems, right now. I hope it gets done because I think he's a fantastic talent, and I think it would add lots of quality to that area of the pitch for us as well. Pratika says, when it comes to transfers, it's not news until the club announces it. Until then, it's rumours, innuendos, fake news, and wild guesses. It's not always that. I think it's worth pointing out. A lot of time and work and like work into kind of building up contacts and resources and sources goes into the journalism side of finding out things. I am very confident in stuff that I report regarding transfers because I know that the people that I go to are very well connected. So, and that's why I don't report too much, and I don't ask too much either. I think it's important to do that. But the wild goose chases surrounding some players and some of the stories I can always read, and I'm like, yeah. Do you remember the what was it? Who was was it Levante? The Levante winger. He used to play for Levante. Who was it? Was it Maya Rao? I think it might have been Maya Rao. You may have remember that. I think it might have either been. It might be yes. Borja Maya Rao, Hatafe. Do you remember the links to him in January? They came up quite strongly. I'll just type in to see where those links came from. I'm just looking down on Twitter to see if I can find it. And there's just a lot of tweets about it, to be honest, more than anything else. But these reports came out in January of this year, and when I asked about this, it was just kind of laughed off. Like it was like there's nothing in this. Like we don't know where this has come from. So and obviously that turned out to be very much the case. So. Yeah, there is more to it than just wild guesses, and it's not. There's a lot of work that goes into trying to source information around transfers. So there you go. Steve says, why not Havertz? Because I've got Havertz on the home shirt, Steve. So that's why I'm not getting Havertz. He's on the home shirt this season. Let's go to Knowledge says, it's sad that we will ignore Alstedt's journey being a professional footballer player and being pregnant. I mean, what do you mean ignore? I don't know what you mean by ignore. I mean, yeah, I think that isn't there a video stories of the season? Amanda Alstedt's pregnancy. There's a story that is a video that literally went out on the Arsenal website yesterday. But you've got to respect someone's privacy, especially in a moment like that. So I don't know if there's anything that's dropped to make you leave that comment about ignoring it, but I don't think the club have ignored it. But also, I think there's an element of privacy that should be respected in these situations as well. Mr. Thuki says, not sure how true it is, but there has been reports of João Neves to PSG for 70 million euros. I thought that we were big admirers of the player, but the release clause was an issue. I've not heard anything about it being that low of a price tag. If they got him for 70 million euros, that's an absolute steal. And Arsenal should have certainly been all over that, but it seems that our minds are elsewhere. Let's go to Vanadru, who says, wouldn't it make sense for Bologna to take one of our players as part of the deal, making it less cash heavy? We have a lot of players to offer and they have made Champions League, so it could be good. There was obviously talk of Nketiah potentially being involved in the deal, but that's not really done much. Amy says Timber is a bit of a new signing. It's that classic saying, it's like a new signing, isn't it? Yuri and Timber. Piku last week says, Tom, I listened last week and you mentioned that we had an interest in Gyökeres. Has anything else come out of that? Also heading to the Lyon game, will you be there? I will be in there. I will be there indeed. I'm very much hoping to be there. It's not been fully confirmed, but I'm certainly expecting to be there. But in regards to Gyökeres, it's a player that Arsenal certainly have watched and appreciated, and there's been interest in him. But in regards to a move this summer, it's very much quiet on the Gyökeres front at the moment. But he was certainly a player that was of interest, is potentially still of interest. I've not asked about him in a while, but the last time I did ask was about a month ago, and it was very much like, he was on a list and he's been appreciated, but his name's not really been talked about. Has not really been come up recently. I know that there was some reports again. I think it was that Leonino, if you like, that Portuguese outlet of sporting specificity that was reporting it. And I saw something yesterday on it, but I can't say I'll be using them as a source at the moment, unless something dramatic happens. That I think that source has been a little bit exposed this summer. Just a couple of shout-outs in the chat box. Bakary Lasagna has been a member now for 19 months. Thank you so much for the kind support. Sam Lowe's been a member for 24 months. His 2-year anniversary supporting the channel. Thank you to Sam and to Bakary as well. You're very much appreciated. And key members of the TGT community, if you'd like to be a member, I am planning next week to do our first summer member podcast. I'm going to be putting a message into the Discord server, and next week we're going to be doing our first Discord member podcast for the evening. Don't worry, it will be available to you all, but it's where members on the server can, of course, come on and speak about the transfer window during pre-season. So we're going to do that next week, and I'll be putting messages into the Discord server. So if you'd like to be a member and join our Discord server, click the join button or the link down in the description to the link tree, and then the subsequent follow-up links. It may not work on iPhone. You may have to do it on laptop or on Android. Sometimes the iPhone version's doesn't always work, so just bear that in mind when you're doing it. Let's go. Paul says, what chant are we going with? Perfect 3 Gabriel goals or something else? I don't know what new chants are going to come out this season. There's always a joy hearing the new Arsenal chants come out. I wonder what we're going to get this year. Idan says, if we include Nketiah in the deal, that would mean in terms of the 50% sell-on clause, would it be kind of a loophole? It is a really good question, and I'm not sure of the ins and outs of this, because, of course, you would think if they've got a 50% sell-on clause, and say you sell Nketiah to them for 30 million, and then you buy Calafiori for 20, let's say, do they only get 50% of the cash? Or is there something in FIFA laws where you have to kind of pay a certain portion of what the market value of the player that you got in a swap deal is? I don't think that would happen, but I think it's worth asking the question. And I'm not 100% sure either. I guess maybe it depends upon the clauses of the deal. Fuad says, usually Arsenal have a main target in the summer like Reiss and Jesus previously. Why do you think it's not the case this summer? Is it because of the lack of quality forwards in the market? I think you've answered your own question, Fuad. This summer is unlike any other where there just simply hasn't been those standout candidates. Someone left a comment on yesterday's video. I'll see if I can find it actually, because it was, a fair question to ask. Let me see. Obviously, there was a lot of comments yesterday on more serious topics. I can't now find it. I know this is absolutely, here it is. So Cash 2188 replied saying, Tom, I disagree being about there isn't any standout targets. A midfielder and striker are as important as signing Reiss and Raya last season, and there are a lot of standout targets available, but we are not a serious club. How are Chelsea and United signing players, but we have restrictions? It's all BS. Now, I replied saying, could you provide some names? That comment was left 18 hours ago, and Cash has not responded. So it's all well and good saying things like, I disagree with you. Arsenal aren't serious. There are loads of standout targets. But if you don't name any, like, how can I take it seriously? And where does any discussion happen? And the reality is that I don't think there are standout candidates, bar ones that are not really available, which are, to me, Alexander Isak, who is going to cost you huge sums of money and is not for sale anyway. And Bruno Guimaraes, I like a lot. I know Clive, who's listening, is not a particular big fan of Guimaraes, or has to be convinced by Guimaraes. But I don't think now his release clause is expired, Newcastle will have any intention of letting him go, and they've made money in the market as well by selling off Anderson and who was the other one, Minte, as well. So yeah, I just don't see it. I just don't see those standout candidates. And that's why there isn't really a main target necessarily during this window. I suppose you could argue one of the main targets was Benjamin Šeško, but he preferred to stay another year at Leipzig. Jacob says, hi, Tom. Love the channel. Thanks, mate. Who do you think would score the most goals for Arsenal if we were to sign them this summer? Osimhen, Williams, or Gyökeres? Williams, of course, is a winger, so he's at a disadvantage to the other two, you would think. But I mean, still, it doesn't stop Saka from scoring plenty of goals. And I think there's more competition in the wide areas as well that would probably limit Williams' game time. So it'd probably be between Osimhen and Gyökeres. Gyökeres, based on last season, based on form, you would go with him. But perhaps based on more established scoring records, you'd go with Osimhen. But based on last season alone and the form potentially, you'd go certainly Gyökeres. So I'll lean towards Gyökeres over Osimhen. Colin says, who is the German I keep hearing we're buying? No one knows. Nobody knows at all. Adig Boyega says, morning. I won't be surprised if Arsenal ends up not signing any player. Honestly, I feel that we all should brace ourselves for the worst that could happen. I mean, yes, because if Arsenal have taught us anything, it's that they don't sign players. If there's one thing we've learned under the Arteta and Edu administration at Arsenal, it's that they just don't sign anyone. And all they do is keep the money for themselves. Yes, so based upon all of the evidence, that's the position to hold. I know sometimes people leave comments saying, Tom, you're so condescending and rude. It is just my British sarcasm. And I'm not going to apologise for my British sarcasm ever. It is ingrained in my personality and it will never stop. Tom says, Fabio said that the Calafiori deal issue is due to the structure and not the sell-on clause. There are reports that it's all a bit of a smokescreen, and Bologna are trying to find a replacement before any announcement. Fab is very well connected. I'm just saying I've not heard that. And the sell-on clause has been from, just the little whispers on my end, been a big issue with this. So, I'm not saying Fab's wrong. I'm just saying I've not heard that. So, and what I did hear was about the sell-on clause. So that's all I can go off. I can only go off what I've, heard, but I respect that other point of view. Let's go to Pratika says, if Moreno were to come, would he be a placeholder for a major signing? Without question, I think that Moreno is more of a short-term signing with a view to spending big money on another midfielder in the near future. Chris says, I'm a bit confused that there has been no further links with Kimmich, with Arsenal or any of the other 5 clubs that he said he would go to. There's been noise surrounding City and a bit on Barcelona again, but they've got so many financial issues. I'm not surprised it's not really come up. Jelly Pig says, hey Tom, big fan of the show, thanks mate. What would you rate this window? Williams for 47 million. I mean, that's more than his release clause, so you've overpaid. Calafiori for 45, Raya for 27, Moreno for 25. I feel like it would be a brilliant window and actually very realistic. I think that would be a really solid 8 out of 10 window. The only thing I think it lacks is if Ramsdale leaves, obviously another goalkeeper, and maybe people would argue another forward. But I think that how much is that? That's 92, 112, 119, 139, 140, 244. No, £144 million, right? So not a wild number in comparison to some of our previous spendings, but probably realistic compared to the restrictions that are ongoing with spending as well. So I think that'd be a really decent win. I was going to say excellent, because I think excellent's probably reserved for a 9-10 window. I think that's a solid 8 out of 10 window, that, to be honest. Adds a starting midfielder for us, potentially. It adds a competitive forward and a competitive defender. So I think it's a solid window. I think it stops short of being a 9-10, because I think you add another midfielder maybe, or another forward, and you've got a 9-10 window there. But I think that's a very decent window indeed. Jamisa says, before the opening of the summer transfer window, sources were saying the club have £200,000 to spend. I mean, that's a low amount of money. I assume you mean 200 million to spend on new signings, and the club is yet to make any. This is a joke. Let me explain to you why it's not a joke, and let me explain to you what the joke is, as I always try to do. I try and do this every single summer, but sadly, not everyone watches this show. So it doesn't always come across to everybody. No one knows how much Arsenal have to spend, Jamisa. No one knows. It is the biggest. It's the biggest comedy thing to me every single time. Whenever you hear these stories of Arsenal have X amount of money to spend in the window, and this comes from someone, I'm in the media and I see people that report these stories on a weekly basis, and I have all the love and respect in the world. But these stories that are like Arsenal have a £200 million war chest, Arsenal don't release that information. Like, they just don't. It's not information Arsenal release. It's not information that Arsenal would ever want out there, because it only hurts their position from a negotiation standpoint. Now, it may be that we can have a look at the finances of previous summer spendings and the restrictions and how close they are to them, and things like this. And so we can sometimes perhaps journalists make estimations on this, but the reality is that any war chest stories, how much Arsenal have to spend, is always an estimation and a guess, an educated guess at best. So if your opinion, and this is the point I need to stress the most, if your opinion that the club is a joke because they've not made any signings, because your interpretation has come from reading a educated guess of how much Arsenal supposedly have to spend, that's on you. Like, with all the love and respect in the world, that's on you, because you have to be cognizant enough to understand that the club do not want anybody to know how much there is in their budget, and there is no benefit to them telling or leaking any of that information at all. So I always say, take war chest stories with the biggest pinch of salt that you can, because there is no reason for the club to want that information out there. Now, Jamis has followed this comment up with another one, saying the club is very slow in their transfer dealings. Let's brace ourselves for another disappointing season. No backup for Saka, neither a 6. Now, we say the club is very slow in their transfer dealings. By this time last season, Arsenal had signed Kai Havertz, Declan Rice, and Jurrien Timber, and spent a combined near £200 million before the middle of July. So Arsenal are not always slow in doing their transfer business, based upon the evidence that I've just provided to you. Arsenal this summer without a doubt, it is slow. The market is slow. We aren't doing business. Man City aren't doing business. Liverpool aren't doing business. Manchester United are about to just land their first major signing of the summer in Lenny Yorrell. So, who is a really exciting talent, who they are spending an incredible amount of money to bring in. And of course, the likes of Chelsea and Villa have done business because they needed to do business. They had to get some players done before the PSR deadline, both in and out of the club. There was pressures on them to do business, where that pressure was not on Arsenal to do business early. Arsenal aren't going to move in the market for the sake of moving in the market. They're never going to sign players for the sake of signing players. They just aren't. And let's be honest, people are sitting here saying this is a joke of a club. I've seen comments on yesterday's video saying the club are pathetic. I've seen tweets that I've replied to. And by the way, whenever I tweet or quote tweet in response to these viewpoints, it's never personal towards the person who's tweeted those tweets. It's me giggling and laughing at the points of view that I see, not the person. It's always on the actual point of view. I want to stress that. It's nothing personal. I just end up laughing so much at this trend of views that I see continuously recycled every single summer without question. They always recycle all the time. I think I saw someone actually leave a comment in today's chat box. Let me see if I can quickly find it, because it perfectly summed up what I'm thinking right now. It was along the lines of, Tom, I feel like I remember you having the same show a year ago. I can't find the comment now, but it was there. That's a shame, because I genuinely saw that comment, and that's whoever it was. I saw it and I appreciated it. So I'm still going to try and find it when I'm talking. But this trend of like Arsenal are pathetic, Arsenal are too slow, Arsenal aren't ambitious, Arsenal are, they aren't serious. It's just a load of bollocks. Cover your kids' ears if that's too offensive for you. I think that's fine for 8 o'clock in the morning, personally, but it's a load of bollocks. Like, it's absolute load of rubbish that Arsenal aren't ambitious. Arsenal have spent more last summer than ever before, and subsequently went on to score more goals in the league than the Invincibles. They went 2 points behind a team that are facing 115 alleged financial breaches and have won 6 of the last 7 titles. If this isn't ambition, if this isn't determination and progression, I don't know what you want. Like, it just comes across as really entitled. That's how it comes across. It comes across like you think you're entitled to this. You're not. It's a sport and it's a competition. So appreciate what's happened. And yeah, again, I almost predicted this. Like, I predicted that Manchester United would be used as an example. So you'd swap places, would you? You're telling me you'd swap transfer business with Manchester United? You want their squad? Is that it? You think Man United are a more ambitious club than Arsenal? Feel free to get on the train on the Avanti West Coast all the way up to Manchester and trade shirts if you like, because I wouldn't. I wouldn't. I think Arsenal are in a far better position. And by the way, there is also an important context to squads. Just because Man United are doing business, it doesn't mean they're more ambitious. It's because they need to more than Arsenal. Manchester United squad is in a bit of a mess right now. They've got to do, their pressure on them to do business is far greater than the pressure on us to do business. We've got a squad that finished 2 points behind the leaders last season and that lacked one of our £38 million additions for everything bar 2 league games. Not even that, less than the league game because of the minutes that Jury and Timber played. So we're already going to be stronger going into next season because we're going to have that player coming into the team. So this context, like around how Arsenal are pathetic or not ambitious or they're not serious because Man United have just bought an 18-year-old with a lot of potential for a big amount of money. They have to. Man United have got to spend. Man United have got to go into the market and add. The pressure on us to do the business is just nowhere near as prevalent, And so I want us to do. And trust me, if we don't sign anyone between now and the end of the window, I'll be very disappointed, and it will be a failure. Don't get that twisted. But the pressure on us to do business early and for the sake of it, and just to get it done quickly, is just not present for us in the same way that it is for other clubs. And that's why City haven't really signed anyone. I know Savio is going to be coming in, but he's part of the City football group. He plays for Troyes. He's never played for Troyes, I don't think, but obviously that's Troyes are the club that owns Savio. So that's not exactly anything. And then, of course, you've got Liverpool, who have brought a brand new manager. Imagine you're a Liverpool fan right now. You are a week away from pre-season, if that, less than a week away from pre-season, and you've got a brand new manager that's come in. Imagine that was Arsenal, and you've signed nobody. You've got a new guy coming in that's got to stamp his authority and take on the Klopp regime, and you've signed no one. And by the way, that Liverpool team is in need of signings. Like, the fans of Liverpool have been calling out for investment in their midfield for a really long time. They need to go into the market in central defence because Van Dijk and Matip. I don't know if Matip is even. Did Joel Matip leave at the end of last season? Yes, he left at the end of last season. Like, they need depth there. I know they got Quansah. coming through, but they need to bring in signings there. I mean, are Liverpool now not an ambitious team? Is that what we're saying? Are they not a serious team? So it's and that was a bit of a rant. I do enjoy them. But I just it always stands. And John says, "But you won nothing." And I know John is our resident Manchester United fan. And if you'd rather have had the season you had compared to us, fair enough. I wouldn't. No, I wouldn't trade it at all. But at the end of the day, I would not swap Arsenal's position with Manchester United. Manchester United have been, a bit of a butt of the joke of the league for the last few years, even though they picked up a couple of trophies on the way. They're just nowhere near the level of Arsenal and Manchester City at the moment in terms of competitiveness across the league. And that's why they had their worst Premier League finish ever last season. So there you go. AU Goodness says, Tom sounds like a parent scolding their child. It's because I just see such lack of education when it comes to these points of view. And so I feel it's, I feel it's a responsibility to try to educate about these positions, because seeing this trend and seeing these absolute, seeing these, just trends of points of views just spiral out of control is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Omar's timing me now, so I feel like I'm compelled a bit to stop. Heavyweight says, Tom, there is no discount for the away shirt like the home kit. It's probably because it's just launched, right? I didn't know there even was a discount for the home kit, to be honest, to be fair. Jan Danny says, don't be confused. Man United still wins trophies. We are Arsenal. We should be doing more trophies compared to Man United. Look, mate, I have full faith that we will be. And that you'll look over the next, you'll look in the period of time since Sir Alex Ferguson left to now, and the time since Arsene Wenger left to now, and into the next 5 years, I am convinced that Arsenal will have far more major trophies and honours than Manchester United. So there you go. John says, our squad, being Manchester United, for context, was depleted with injuries last season. We had Casemiro in defence and Bruno too. By the way, I saw Sir Alex take us to 13th, 11th and 8th, and we've had bad times. 43 years I've watched this. John, I don't doubt your knowledge of Manchester United. What I disagree with is the view of the season that United had compared to us. Yes, he had injuries, but so did a lot of clubs. Arsenal had injuries last season. We invested nearly £40 million on a top defender, and we didn't have him for the entirety of the season. Not at all. So it's not like you're the only one that's had injuries, and yet we still managed to finish just 2 points off the top. We had Gabriel Jesus missing for a huge portion of it again. We had Martinelli missing. Ødegaard missed key games. Saka wasn't available when we played Manchester City, and we still beat them. It's not like we haven't had our issues and our problems. Partey was missing for the majority of the campaign again. The whole injury argument just doesn't stack up, because every team gets injuries. Loads of teams get injuries. And Casemiro only went into defence at the end of the season. That's just some recency bias. And you're the ones who spent 80 million on the guy. Maybe you should have spent more money on a cheaper and perhaps even better midfielder and more defenders. That's on you. So, there you go. There you go. Tears of Disgust hold on. I actually think, did I make it? I think I made it. No, I think I still need to print it off. I actually have got a draft of the bingo cards. I will get it printed out. I was tempted to even get it laminated. I've got a lot of teacher friends. I might be able to get it laminated. So people, let's get your hashtag bingo card into that. You are going to be my bingo card today, people. So get your hashtag bingo card. Should we do it that way? I feel like we should always do it that way to just fill the chat box. I might need to get an emoji. I know I promise emojis all the time and then don't deliver. So don't at me. But hashtag bingo card into the chat box this morning, because Tears of Disgust has ticked off our bingo card this morning. Tom has reached a level where he needs to be more corporate. Otherwise, he might not get interviews or access. Yes. All of my opinions are now censored, because otherwise I'm not going to be able to go and get a chat with Bukayo Saka after a couple of games. It always makes me laugh so much when I see these comments because it's like it's like that it's like they actually believe it. And if they do, fair enough. You stand by it, say it with chest. But if you think that's the case, it's very funny. It's very funny because despite the fact that I've sat here and said Arteta needs to improve his in-game management and needs to improve the way he uses subs, and that his subs ultimately cost us in that game against Aston Villa most prevalently, despite the fact that I've said that we do need to improve the loan structure at times with some of our youth players, despite the fact that I've criticised multiple performances, despite the fact that I wasn't convinced by Kai Havertz's arrival initially and said I didn't think we had space for a project signing, only to be proved considerably wrong by that point of view, despite the fact that I've been critical of Edu signings at times and for the certain improvement in the sales department that is needed, even though it's not as bad as some people make out, despite all of the criticisms that I have had, apparently I don't do it because I otherwise I wouldn't get interviews. By the way, for the pure avoidance of all doubt, Arsenal have never ever once told me off, criticized me for anything I've ever written, spoken about. They've never guided me in any kind of direction towards writing or not writing something. The only guidance Arsenal have ever and still do give me is whenever I ask, obviously, and speak to people in the club about potential transfer targets, just to get some guidance on any potential deals that they're willing to discuss. And it's like, it's always funny, but you're never going to convince them. And I accept that. Tears are discussed by the words, despite all the evidence that I've given here, despite all of what we've talked about. They're never going to be convinced. They're never going to be convinced that is the case. And they have convinced themselves, despite all that evidence, that Omar says, seriously, if you are pulling strings at the club at any level, get some accessories for us, please. Indeed. Teaser Discuss says, you shame, laugh, and belittle the paid chats, opinions, and counterpoints of your subscribers. Yes, I'm always belittling people. Always. It makes me think, why would they come back? If they felt I was belittling them, why would they ever come back? I feel like I am entitled to an opinion myself. And you all know that we invite people on. We all invite people on the show. We're always open to having a conversation. I always say, if you want to come on the show, and by the way, it is discussed. If you want to come on the show and tell this to my face, feel free. DMs are open across all of my platforms. I'd happily have a chat with you, and you can ask me any question you like. I don't think you will, but it's always an absolute pleasure to open up the floor to anyone that would like to have a chat, as long as they are, of course, respectful and not abusive, and over the age of 18 and willing to use a webcam, of course, which often is a bit of a stumbling point for some because most of the trolls are 12. Kevin says, there's a bunch of cognitive science around the psychology of negativity. The short version is that biologically more efficient to be negative, so it's easy to be negative, and it's lazy. I do think there's obviously that label of lazy criticism does spiral out of control quite a bit, and it is easy to be negative. It's also very beneficial on the pocket, if you know what I mean, to be very negative, and it draws in a lot more attention if you're hyperbolic and exaggerative and crazy. And so, yeah, for me, it's important to point that out. So I appreciate that comment. Canoe says, when are you and Terry going to have a debate? Trust me, I have. The amount of times I've suggested to Terry from the Football Terrorists to have a debate on anything Arsenal. The thing, ironically, is now Terry's actually aligned with a lot of views about Arsenal. He's very positive and complimentary, actually, about Arsenal. So it's taken him a while, but he got there in the end. So, but trust me, I've attempted to get in debates. So we got a bigger debate about Haaland and Manchester United's decision, supposedly not to sign Haaland from Salzburg before he moved to Manchester United. Did he ever want to do it on camera? No, of course. It never happened. But I'm always open to it. You know me, I don't shy away from a challenge in that sense. So, especially because I know that, Terry is, and, we'll have a respectful debate back and forth, and that's fine by me. As Nick says, yeah, Terry seems fine about Arsenal at the moment. I don't think we would do that. Wisdom says, why do people criticize you? As far as I know, that you're an Arsenal fan and you have your opinion. Exactly. Look, because some people don't like Because I can be self-admittedly a little bit sarcastic. That is my failing. I completely own it. I know it. I can be sarcastic, and that's because when you've been doing this for as long as I've been doing this, your patience can be tested to a degree. And for some people, that ends in abusive responses, just horrible insults towards people, and we don't do that. The worst that you'll get from me is sarcasm. That is the worst that you'll get. If you can live with a bit of sarcasm, you are safe. But you're not going to be abused. You're not going to be insulted. If you can deal with a bit of sarcasm, that is it. And it's as simple as that. Tears are discussed. I'll probably read out this final comment from them because I understand there is a bit of trolling going on in the chat box, and some people don't really like it when I give trolls in the chat box too much time. But I will read out this final one, which says, "I accept Tom's opinions, but I joined and saw someone mentioning that we need more players, and he just laughs it off. Been that 4 times the last week I joined." And the thing is right. The problem with criticism in this form is that it's entirely out of context and twisted, because saying that I have laughed off a comment, which I'm not going to lie, I definitely laughed off a comment saying that Arsenal are a joke of a club. So that's the comment that they've left out of that little critique of the way I've looked at it. They've tried to package it in a completely different way to obviously what was said. And it happens all the time. It's part of media. It's part of social media. It happens all the time, because why would you include key bits of information in a criticism that would ultimately undermine the point that you're trying to make? So if you don't do that, it makes it very easy to make somebody look very different. Now, the point in question, as you all saw from earlier on in the episode, was a point that was made suggesting that Arsenal are a joke of a club. So it wasn't that I saw someone mention that we need more players and Tom laughed it off. Saying Arsenal need more players is fine, because we do. And I've said that time and time again. As you all who have listened to this show know, I said that the priority is midfield for me, and it is that we need to bring in competition for Bukayo Saka. And ultimately, we need a defender, and probably going to need to bring in a competitive goalkeeper. But what Tiz had discussed, obviously, as I believe, purposefully left out of this comment, is the point where they've said that we are a joke of a club. So I'll bring up the previous comment. Here it is. I'll read it out one more time. Before the opening of the summer transfer window, sources were saying the club have 200 million to spend on new signs. The club is yet to make a major signing. The club is a joke. This is what I responded to, because it's that little word at the end. If it didn't include that little word at the end of "this club is a joke," then it would be completely different. But that is the viewpoint that continues to be spewed across our social media feeds, is somehow Arsenal are not a serious club, they have no ambition, and that they are a joke. And so because it was left out, it was very, very telling indeed. And now Tiz is claiming that I'm not reading out all their comments. This was the comment I read out. The following comment onto this was just, "People have 200 characters." At no point have they followed it up at any point by saying the joke part that was left. I can only do so much, so I've tried my best, and I know I apologize. Some of you don't like me responding to these types of comments, but I think it's worth it for clarity at times. I think it's worth it. Let's go to Keiko says it's also easier for the lesser teams to improve, and it's a really good piece of context, this, from Keiko, as well. As we mentioned, Manchester United being used as an example. Man United are, and I think that our resident Man United fan John in the chat box would agree, they need to do more business than Arsenal, right? They need to do more business. Manchester United have to do more business than Arsenal because their team is nowhere near as good as Arsenal's. So Arsenal have a less pressure, less desire, less need to do business. And because of that, they are going to be, more pressure to do the deals that they are doing. And by the way, they've only signed, I think they've only signed, I'll just double check that, and I will be fair, all transfers. So have a quick look, because as we always do, we always fact check these things. Xerxes, sorry, as well. Yes, Xerxes is coming. So they've signed Xerxes, and they're about to bring in I don't expect them to do loads more, to be honest. And the Xerxes signing is weird to me. I don't know if you find this strange, but I find the Xerxes deal for Man United, I think he's a good player. Don't get me wrong. I think he's a good player. But when you've just spent like 80 odd million euros on Rasmus Højlund, you've got Marcus Rashford at the club. The Xerxes deal really, I find it an odd one. Tell me if I'm wrong. I might be wrong. Maybe they needed another centre forward. I am looking through their list of players that they've got, and perhaps they needed another centre forward. But yeah, that one, when you just sign Rasmus Højlund, are you going to give the minutes to Xerxes? Is that going to stunt Højlund's progression? I think it's a fair question to ask. So, because he's older than Højlund, Xerxes, he's 2 years older. So it's an interesting piece of business, and I'm curious to see how it plays out as well. But yes, going back to Keiko's comment, it's far easier for other teams to make those signings, and that's what's important. So yeah, there you go. Perez says, Tom's going on for an hour. I got to start from the beginning. Great job, TC. It's been a good show today. Hamish says, Tom's a class act, giving the fans earliest news before any other fan channel. That's not always true, to be fair. And the reason why it's not always true is because I do this show every day at 8 a.m. And there are far harder workers in this space than me. Deluded Gooner is a far harder worker than me. Harry Symeou is a far harder worker than me. They produce multiple shows a day, and they're able to obviously react and respond to some of the news quicker than I am. So it wouldn't be fair to say, Hamish, that I'm always first on the news, but we do this show every day at 8 a.m. Anything that happens overnight, I tend to be the first one too, because I'm doing it the first thing in the morning. But there are some incredibly hardworking other content creators out there, like Harry, like DG, that produce some fantastic content on a regular basis. And of course, our good friend Dan Potsy is always very much on it with not just Arsenal news, but loads of Arsenal news as well. Loads of football news across all the clubs. Wisdom says, no ambition and no ambition for winning the league are different things. I still need some moves like Reiss to see winning ambition. Wisdom, last summer Arsenal spent more money than they've ever spent before, despite having competed for the title in 22-23. 23-24 comes around. They've competed for the title for a second time, and you're saying there's no ambition for winning the league, that you still need some more moves to see a winning. I don't know what we could do more. I don't know how what we've done under Arteta couldn't convince anybody that we don't have an ambition to win the league. That's what I find hard to get my head around, is how can everything that Arsenal have done to this point not be convincing enough to you that Arsenal's ambition is to win the league? You know, that's what I struggle with, is that I struggle with the point of view that somebody cannot be convinced yet, despite everything that Arsenal have done, that we are aiming to win the league. And I think that's fair, you know. I think that's a fair retort. I just don't know how you couldn't be convinced by this stage. Nick, I am in the office, you're right, and that's why I'm going to end the show right now. I'm not in the office, but I'm going to be starting work in 30 seconds time. So thank you all for listening. Have a fantastic rest of your day. Sorry there was a few rants in this, but I thought there was some important context brought to the conversation and some important retorts that need to be said about attacks on my character. But thank you for all listening. I'll appreciate all of you and everything, genuinely. It makes for a really good conversation. Do drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you're new around here. With those notifications turned on, I'll be back with you tomorrow morning, bright and early, of course, breaking down the latest Arsenal news that happens in the next 24 hours. But stay safe, stay well, stay happy and respectful. And as always, up the Arsenal.